Welcome to another segment of my biology videos, and we are focusing on the topic transport in animals, but specifically we are looking at the topic, the lymphatic system. So what is the lymphatic system? Well, the lymphatic system, this is a transport. So this is a transport and defense system in the body. So it is simply a transport and defense system in the body. So there are components that the lymphatic system is made up of that will help to defend the body against diseases. So what are the components? So we can talk about now what are the components of the lymphatic system. So number one, the lymphatic system is made up of what we are calling as being, lymphatic, so it is made up of lymphatic vessels. So these lymphatic vessels are simply just a network of vessels that have a blind end in what we are calling as being the tissue cell. So normally where there's a tissue fluid, they are going to have their blind ends in that direction or in that end. So we can simply say this is just a network of vessels. So a network of vessels that have blind ends in the tissue cells. So that is what you need to remember, in the tissue cells. So the lymphatic system is simply made up of one, what we are calling as being the lymphatic vessels. Two, they are made up of what we simply call as being a fluid. We can simply say a fluid called lymph. So they are made up of a fluid called lymph. So they are made up of that. Now, of course, when we talk about this fluid we are calling as being lymph, it is actually derived from what we are calling as being tissue fluid, but we can simply say maybe this lymph is actually derived from tissue. It is actually derived from tissue fluid and contains, so it actually contains more of what we can say glycerol. So it actually contains glycerol, more glycerol than tissue fluid. It also contains what we are calling as being fatty acids. It also contains more white blood cells. It also contains what we are calling as being antibodies, a lot of them, and what we are talking about as being antitoxins. So it contains a lot of these components than what we are calling than tissue fluid itself. So that is what we can talk about. So though it is actually derived from tissue fluid, it contains more of glycerol, fatty acids, white blood cells, antibodies, antitoxins than the tissue fluid itself. So another component of the lymphatic system, it consists of what we can simply call as being glands and organs. So there are certain glands and organs that are there. We can give examples of such glands and organs that you are going to find there. For example, you are going to find the spleen, you are going to find the adenoids, they are going to be there. You are going to find the tonsils, you are going to find the thymus, which is a gland. You are going to find also what we are calling as being the lymph nodes. So the glands and organs of the lymphatic system are simply made up of what we are calling as being the spleen, the adenoid, the tonsils closer to to your lower part of your tongue, the thymus, which we can say is actually somewhere closer to the to your heart, and of course throughout you're going to find that there are lymph nodes that are there. Now, of course, you need to remember that when it comes to what we are calling as being the spleen, when it comes to the spleen, it is actually the largest organ of the lymphatic system. So we can simply say that the spleen is the largest. So it is actually the largest organ of the lymphatic system. So it is actually the largest organ of the lymphatic system. So the largest organ that you're going to have. So it is actually the spleen. Then of course, when we talk about what we are calling as being the thymus, well, the thymus, this thymus is actually located on top of the heart and is actually very big in children, but as they get older, it actually becomes smaller or degenerates. That is what you need to remember. Then apart from that, you are going to find that the smallest vessels of the lymphatic system are simply called lymphatic capillaries. And there's also what we call the lacto. So the lacto is the one that is found in the small intestines. Remember, there are certain projection in the small intestines that we simply call as being the villi. So this is where you're going to find the lacto. Yeah. Another important component is that when it comes to what we are calling as being the lymph, so two prominent features, maybe I can just talk about, so we can simply say that two prominent features, so the two prominent features that are found, along the lymph vessels are what we are calling as being valves. So along the lymph vessels, you are going to find that it contains valves and also what we are calling as being the lymph nodes. So you are going to find that it contains valves and lymph nodes. Now, what are the functions of what we are calling as being the valve? What do the valves do along the lymph vessels? Well, they play a very important role in this case. So the valves keep the lymph, that fluid we talked about, the lymph flowing in one direction. So it ensures that it actually flows in one direction, preventing, in simple terms, the backflow of what we are calling as being the lymph. Then what about what we are calling as being the lymph nodes? What do the lymph nodes do? Well, the lymph nodes are very important in the lymph vessel. Maybe I can just give you what they do. Usually when it comes to the lymph nodes, they actually contain what we are calling as being the white blood cells. So they contain a lot of white blood cells. So what does it do? Well, these actually, we can say, these trap and kill bacteria. These trap and kill bacteria in the fluid, in the lymph, before the fluid returns to the blood. So before the fluid can return to the blood, what is going to happen is that in the lymph nodes, they are going to trap and kill any bacteria that are there in the fluid before the fluid can actually be retained into the blood. So that is basically what the lymph nodes are going to be doing. But of course, in some books, you are going to find that they are going to tell you that they play maybe important role that they are going to have. One of the components that you are going to find that the lymph nodes may actually play is that maybe we can summarize them this way. They filter, so they help to filter foreign bodies. So they help to filter foreign bodies, bacteria, and dead tissues. So you're going to find that they're going to do that. Remember, we said from the fluid that is available in the lymphatic system, dead tissues from the lymph. That's what they do before it can be taken to the blood. So the lymph nodes are actually going to be doing that. Another component that we can talk about is that they produce. So they produce and store. So they are capable of producing. They produce and store what we are calling as being lymphocytes. These are a type of white, blood cells that they have. So the lymph nodes are the ones that are able to produce and store these lymphocytes, which are later on added to the lymph as it, passes on its way to go into the blood. Then 3, we can simply say that, the lymph nodes, they actually become active, very active when the body is actually invaded by foreign body. So it's a way. So they become active. Now, how can you know that they become active? They are going to swell up. So they bulge up. So when they bulge up, they become more active when the body is actually invaded by foreign bodies. So we can simply say they swell. When they swell up, thereby becoming active when the body is invaded by foreign bodies. So if there are bacteria, germs that come in, it simply means they are going to swell up. That makes them to become very active so that they are able to fight, any foreign pathogens that come into the body. So this is the function of what we are simply calling as being the lymph node. So in the exam, it is always important that you understand, this concept that we have actually, talked about. So in summary, what can we say is the function of the lymphatic system? Well, let's try to put up just the summary there of what we are calling as being the lymphatic system. What does it do? So we can put up in this case maybe, just a summary of the lymphatic, lymphatic system. What does it do in the body? Well, number 1, we can simply say it absorbs. So we can say it absorbs and transports. So it actually absorbs and transports cholesterol. So it actually absorbs and transports cholesterol. Apart from cholesterol, it also transports fatty acids, and glycerol. So it actually transports glycerol, to the blood. So that is what the lymphatic system does. Number 2, we can say it actually drains. It actually drains excess. It actually drains excess tissue fluid. It actually drains excess tissue fluid and takes it back to the blood. So that is what it does. So it drains the excess tissue fluid, removes it from the tissue cells. Then later on, after being purified, it is actually taken back into the blood. Then the third one, we can simply say, it adds lymphocytes, to the blood. So these are the main functions of the lymphatic system that we have talked about. So in the next video, I'm going to look at an examination question and see how you are able to answer a question based on this discussion.